There's a kind of grief no one prepares you for. It doesn't come with funerals, flowers, or condolences. It arrives silently, almost politely. It doesn't knock on your door. It waits in the background. A shadow behind your smile, a silence behind your plans. This is the grief of unmet versions of yourself. It's the artist you thought you'd become. It's the relationship you were sure would last. The confidence you hoped would come by now. It's not that your life is bad. It's just not the one you once pictured. And in that gap between reality and imagination, sorrow takes root. This grief doesn't scream, it sighs. It lingers in your chest when you scroll past someone who made it. It rests in the quiet moments when your old dreams knock faintly on your heart. You may dismiss it as laziness, regret, or failure. But it's not failure. It's mourning. And mourning doesn't only belong to death. It belongs to change too. No one told you you'd have to grieve who you could have been. No one warned you that letting go of a dream could feel like burying a piece of your soul, so we carry it in silence, smiling when asked how we're doing, pretending we're fine with how things unfolded. But inside, there's an ache. The ache of almost of could have been. Of the life we secretly rehearsed. Maybe it was a version of you that had more courage, or one that wasn't afraid to be seen. Maybe it was the family you thought you'd have by now. Maybe it was the job you left behind, the dream you shelved to be practical. These are not just memories. They are echoes of identity. When they fade, we feel a kind of death. But no one comes to help you grieve that. There's no ritual for saying goodbye to who you might have been. No ceremony for retiring a dream. Just long walks and soft tears no one notices. But it matters. It matters that you once hoped. It matters that you once believed. It matters that it hurts. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're not weak for needing time to let go. You're simply human. Being human means loving things we can't always keep. It means changing without always choosing to. And accepting that loss isn't just about people. It's about identities too. If you've been feeling a quiet sadness with no name, maybe this is it. The unspoken grief of letting go of who you thought you'd be. And you're not alone in it. Many carry this ache silently, smiling through it, achieving despite it. They too wonder about that other path, that different life, that other version of themselves they never got to meet. It's okay to grieve it. It's okay to miss a life you never lived. And it's okay to pause and feel it fully. Not to wallow, but to honor. Because every version of you mattered, even the ones that didn't make it to the surface. You are not a failure for changing directions. You are not lost because your path looks different now. You are simply growing in a new direction. But first, we grieve. Gently, quietly. We give a name to this ache. We hold it with kindness. And we make room for what might grow next. Not in denial of what we lost, but in reverence of what once was. Because even dreams deserve a farewell. Even identities deserve a eulogy. And even you, the you that no longer fits, deserves to be loved. Not just for what you did, but for what you once dared to hope. You were brave to dream. You were brave to let go. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. This is healing. So sit with your sorrow. Breathe with it. Let it speak. And when it's ready, let it go. Not because it didn't matter, but because you do. The grief no one talks about deserves to be heard. And so do you. Let this be the beginning of that. Maybe you once imagined a life with more color. A version of you who smiled easier, lived louder, loved deeper. That version still visits sometimes in dreams or quiet what-ifs. You see them walking in the distance. Not angry, not bitter, just a little sad. Like they know they won't be chosen. There's a kind of mourning that doesn't ask for permission, just shows up. In the middle of a perfectly normal day, it arrives not with drama, but with a sigh. A moment of silence in the middle of the noise. And suddenly you remember who you were supposed to be. Not the one surviving. Not the one folding laundry, paying bills, smiling politely. But the one who painted, danced, ran through the rain. The one who believed. Before the world told them not to. Before survival became the only goal. It's easy to look back and judge ourselves. To ask why we didn't try harder, dream braver, risk more. But grief doesn't live in logic. It lives in the quiet ache behind your ribs, in the way your voice softens when you speak of the past, in the eyes that still scan the crowd, hoping to find yourself. Letting go is not the same as forgetting. It's remembering without clinging, loving without needing. There's grace in admitting something mattered, even if it didn't last, even if it never really began. Sometimes the grief is for the version of us who never got the chance. It's the version who lived in journals, in vision boards, in the corners of imagination. The version who wasn't chosen by life. But maybe they weren't meant to carry the full weight. Maybe they were the spark that lit the path. And you, here and now, are the one meant to walk it. Mourning who you thought you'd be doesn't mean you failed. It means you dared to dream. It means you were brave enough to hope. And maybe that hope is still in you, just quieter now. You may not be who you planned, but you were someone who survived, who adapted, who kept showing up. And there's power in that, a quiet, steady power. When the old dreams fall apart, the pieces don't vanish. They become compost. Soft soil for something new. Not necessarily bigger, but truer, more honest. Life has a strange way of growing beauty in unexpected places. In detours, disappointments, in versions of you that feel like Plan C. But maybe Plan C is where your real self lives. Not perfect, not polished, but real. Whole in its own weathered way. The grief might never fully go away. It doesn't have to. It just needs room to breathe. You can carry it gently, like an old photograph, like a favorite song from a different season. The point isn't to erase the past, but to stop making it the judge of your worth. You are not your missed chances. You are not your detours. You are not the version you couldn't become. You are this breath, this heartbeat, this moment. In this moment, you can choose kindness toward the dreamer you were, toward the survivor you became. There is still time, not to become who you once imagined, but to become who you truly are, without the pressure, without the performance, without the shame. Sometimes healing is just letting yourself be ordinary and finding wonder in that, finding peace in what remains. The grief of lost versions is real, but so is the beauty of becoming, of soft arrivals, of small, quiet beginnings. You haven't missed your life. You've just begun to meet yourself, not in a fantasy, but here, in the truth of your own breath, in the mirror that finally sees you clearly. Grief may have shaped you, but it doesn't get to define you. You get to decide what's next, with tenderness and a quiet kind of courage. Sometimes it feels like there's a shadow life running alongside yours, a version of you that made all the right decisions, that never got derailed. That shadow haunts you. It's not because it's real, but because it feels like it could have been. You imagine where you'd be if you hadn't failed that class, if you hadn't fallen in love with the wrong person, if you had moved when you had the chance, or stayed when you were too afraid to. All the what-ifs pile up into a kind of invisible sorrow. It doesn't scream. It hums in the background of your life. A quiet ache you carry into every room, and still, you smile. You do your job. You answer texts. You show up. But a part of you is always somewhere else, mourning what never happened. The grief of the unlived life is hard to explain. It doesn't come with funerals or sympathy cards. Just a strange emptiness that shows up on birthdays, on Sunday nights, in passing mirrors. You might try to outrun it by becoming someone impressive. You chase achievement like it can fill the hole. But no title or trophy can replace a dream that never got to breathe. You might try to numb it instead. The busyness, food, scrolling, perfection. But distraction is not the same as healing. Eventually, the ache returns, because you're not just grieving an outcome. You're grieving a version of yourself that never got to live. The version that was softer, braver, more curious, more free. And the hardest part, you're the only one who ever knew them. So you become the keeper of their memory. You feel it in quiet moments. It's like when you see an old photo, or hear a song that reminds you of who you used to want to be. It's not about being ungrateful for the life you have now. It's about making space for the grief of the life you didn't. Because that grief is real, and it's allowed. No one teaches us how to mourn invisible things, but they still weigh on the heart. They still shape how we move through the world. Sometimes grief isn't about death. It's about the quiet absence of becoming. The road's not taken, the letters never sent, the plans made and then abandoned, where you are not a failure for not living every possibility. You are human, and humans must choose. Every step forward, something else is left behind. That's not weakness, that's life. And life is full of necessary losses. Sometimes growing means grieving, because growth comes with change. Change always asks us to let go, even if we're not ready, even if it hurts. But here's what no one tells you. The dream you didn't live may still leave gifts behind. Even in its absence, it shaped you. It gave you hunger, imagination, compassion for those still chasing theirs. The grief you carry is proof you dared to want more. You dared to hope. That hope matters. Even if the ending changed, and maybe, just maybe, you can still carry pieces of that dream with you. Not to recreate it exactly, but to honor it in small ways, in your choices, in your creativity, in the gentleness you show others. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means acknowledging the loss and moving anyway. Carrying the love, not the burden. You don't have to erase your past to live your present. You can be both who you are and who you almost became. They can live alongside each other, like roots and blossoms from the same tree, and grow new branches while honoring the ones that never sprouted. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to hold joy and grief in the same hand. Life was never meant to be a straight line. It was always meant to bend and break and rebuild. You may never be who you thought you'd be, but you can still be someone beautiful, someone real, is someone whole in their brokenness. And that is worth grieving for, too. Not because you lost it, but because you survived it, and are still becoming, still here. We rarely grieve in isolation. Even as we wrestle with our own unmet hopes, we're surrounded by the noise of everyone else seemingly achieving theirs. The world doesn't slow down for your sadness. Social media becomes a museum of the lives you didn't get to live. Perfect families, big promotions, beautiful weddings. It's hard not to look around and wonder, did I take a wrong turn somewhere? Comparison isn't just a thief of joy, it's a sharp echo of loss. See someone else's gain and feel your own failure reflected back. Not because you resent them, but because it reminds you of what you didn't become. There's a particular kind of grief in feeling left behind, when your peers seem to be thriving, while you're still trying to breathe through your disappointment. Their success becomes a mirror, and all you can see is the version of yourself you're not. We often underestimate how loud those silent comparisons can be, how even a passing post or casual conversation can reopen the wound. Not because we are bitter, but because we are human. And humans measure themselves against each other, especially when unsure of their own worth. The truth is, most people are also grieving something quietly. But you don't see the tear-streaked pillows or broken timelines in filtered images. Everyone is performing to some degree. And the performance often hides the pain, just like yours does. It's easy to forget that behind those polished milestones are people just as fragile, just as afraid. Some of them, too, are grieving who they thought they'd be. Some are clinging to lives that no longer fit, afraid to let go. We are all just trying to make peace with where we are, even if it doesn't look like it from the outside, or even if it's a silent, lonely war. Your grief is valid, even if no one else sees it. Even if your sadness is invisible to those around you. Even if it looks like you're doing just fine. Comparison keeps us locked in cycles of shame. It whispers you should be more, when you're already carrying too much. It makes us forget that healing takes time, and not everyone is on the same clock. The version of you that could have been isn't a failure, it's a shadow. A ghost that sometimes walks beside you but does not define you. You can grieve it without letting it consume you. There is quiet courage in choosing to stay present in your actual life, in resisting the urge to rewrite the past or race toward a future shaped by someone else's expectations, in building a life not based on what was supposed to be, but on what is real and possible now. That is not weakness. That is the deepest kind of strength. To sit with grief and still choose to move forward, see what you didn't become, and still choose to become something else. Something honest. Something whole in its own way. The weight of who you thought you'd be will lessen not by forgetting, but by forgiving. Forgiving yourself for not knowing. For doing your best with what you had. That version of you that never came to be still deserves tenderness. You can love what could have been and still embrace what is. You can hold both. Maybe that's where true healing begins. not in replacing the dream, but in softening the ache, in holding your past self's hand and saying, I see you, and I'm still here. The dream didn't come true, but you are still real. Maybe now you can dream something quieter, something more rooted in truth than in fantasy. A life not of performance, but of presence. You are not the only one who mourns quietly. You are not the only one rewriting what it means to live a good life. This is the silent revolution, accepting that different is not less. It's okay to be where you are, even if it doesn't look like you imagined. Even if it still hurts sometimes. The ache is proof that you dared to hope. And that is nothing to be ashamed of. Grief, after all, is the price of loving a future that didn't come to pass. But now you have space to love something new. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've forgiven yourself, the world, the winding path. You were never meant to be perfect, just present, just kind to yourself. The dream may have died, but you didn't, and that means something. That means everything. Sometimes the hardest part isn't losing the dream, it's admitting it's over. You keep trying to revive what's already gone cold, hoping that maybe with enough effort, the old version of you will come back. But the truth is, they've already left, and that's okay. Because grieving them makes space for who you are now. You're not starting from zero. You're starting from experience. From all the heartbreak, the detours, the resilience you didn't know you had. You may not be who you wanted to be, but maybe that's a quiet gift. There's wisdom in disappointment. There's growth in surrender. You get to choose a new path. One built not from perfection, but from permission. Permission to change, to pivot, to not have it all figured out. Maybe you thought you'd be married by now, or a parent, or successful by society's standards. But look at who you've become instead. Someone with depth, with emotional courage, with insight born from pain. It's not lesser, it's different. And different doesn't mean broken. You're allowed to rewrite your story mid-chapter. You're allowed to dream new dreams. Even if they're smaller, slower, softer. There's no shame in starting again. No failure in choosing peace over pride. Grief is not a finish line. It's a companion on the road. It doesn't ask you to get over it. It asks you to carry it kindly. To let it teach you instead of define you. You can be grieving and growing at the same time. You can miss what was and still love what is. Healing isn't erasure, it's integration. The old version of you is not your enemy. They were trying their best. And now, it's your turn to do the same with new clarity. Life rarely goes according to plan. Maybe it was never supposed to. Maybe the beauty lies in the improvisation, in the spontaneous courage to begin again. You don't need to rush the process, or prove your worth by reinventing overnight. Quiet progress is still progress. There's nothing wrong with being a late bloomer, or someone who takes the scenic route. You are not behind. You are becoming. And becoming takes time. It takes stumbling. It takes loss. And it takes love, especially self-love. Letting go of who you thought you'd be is not giving up. It's honoring reality, stepping into presence. The presence is where peace lives. You don't need to carry the weight of should anymore. You get to put it down. You get to rest, even as the world keeps spinning. Even as others seem further ahead. There's no universal timeline, only the one that unfolds in your own pace. Your quiet healing is not invisible. It's sacred. When you stop forcing your life into old shapes, something beautiful happens. You begin to notice what fits now. What feels light instead of heavy. What feels like home. Maybe the life you have isn't the one you imagined, but maybe it's the one that finally lets you breathe. Your story is still worth telling, even with edits. Even with erased pages and new beginnings, you don't have to chase the life you lost. You can build the life you need. A life rooted in truth, not expectation. A life filled with small joys and soft mornings. A life that whispers, you're still allowed to hope. Every step you take toward acceptance is an act of strength. It's not a loud cinematic strength, but the quiet, steady kind that sustains you. It's that carries you gently forward. You can grieve the old dream and still open your hands to the new. Let go, not because it wasn't meaningful, but because you're ready to live fully here, in this moment, with this version of you, the one who is still worthy, still enough, still becoming. The grief may stay, but so will the growth. and that is its own quiet miracle. One day you wake up, and the ache isn't as sharp. Grief hasn't vanished, but it hums more softly. Like a radio dial turned down low in another room, you begin to see that maybe letting go was an opening, not an ending. That shedding the old dream created space for something truer, something that fits the shape of your soul now. It's not that the loss didn't matter. It did. It always will. But you're learning to carry it differently. It's less like a wound, more like a scar. Not erased, just no longer bleeding. You start to move differently through the world, not trying to outrun your past, but walking beside it with compassion. You speak more gently to yourself now, because you know what harshness does to a tender spirit, because you've lived through that storm. There are still days when the old ache whispers back. Days when you wonder who you might have been, but you don't fight it anymore. You let the feeling come. You breathe through it. You let it pass. Healing, you've realized, isn't about deleting the pain. It's about learning to sit with it without drowning. To let it flow without letting it define you. Maybe the person you thought you'd be was only ever meant to get you this far. A necessary version, not the final one. Life is revision. A constant rewriting of self. A poem that never ends. You are not a failure because you changed course. You are not broken because your path twisted unexpectedly. You are evolving. What you grieved is still a part of you, but it no longer holds you hostage. You can love the memory without needing to live inside it. You start to find new dreams. Not replacements, but companions. Lighter, quieter, more your own. You notice how the sun feels different on your skin? How laughter feels easier now? Rest no longer feels like a punishment. You don't need to prove your worth through your achievements, or your old ambitions, or the life you once chased. You can just be, and that is enough. It always was. There is grace in this becoming, in the soft rebuilding, in the quiet return to self. Some people won't understand your grief. That's okay, you don't need them to. You're learning to honor it yourself, to bow to what was without getting lost in it, to love who you were and who you are now. This is not the life you once planned, but it's still a life. A full, breathing, beautiful life. One with room for sorrow and joy to coexist. One where you don't need to pretend you're fine. One where you're allowed to change your mind. You've let go of the illusion of certainty. And in its place, you've found something gentler. Presence, peace, possibility. You don't need to become someone else to be worthy. You don't need to chase some perfect version of you. You're allowed to be in process. The grief is still there, but so is the hope. So is the light. You've made space for all of it. You've softened into the truth of now. You've survived the shedding, and now you are beginning again, on your own terms. Slowly, quietly, honestly. You are not who you used to be. And that's okay. That's more than okay. You are still growing, still unfolding, still worthy. Even in the silence, even in the stillness, even in the unknown, there is beauty here, in this unfinished version of you. In this tender middle chapter, you are not lost, you are becoming. That is sacred. This is quiet philosophy, where thinking isn't loud, and life doesn't need to be either. Subscribe if you haven't already, not for noise, but for something you can actually feel.